Sure, yes, I can do that.
All right, so you guys know how to do the chat and everything like that. If there's anybody out there who's not on the mailing list, that's my preferred way of making contact with everybody. And so the parameters for in-person class will be this. You are welcome if you're fully vaccinated and you're at your full level of immunity, meaning if you've had Moderna or Pfizer 2 weeks after your second shot. Help me out here. I think I was told that for Johnson & Johnson, the one shot, they advise 4 weeks after your shot. Dr. Mark, is that correct?
I believe it's still 2 weeks.
It's also 2 weeks?
I believe so, yeah.
All right, I'll modify that. But anyway, so bring a mask. I don't know whether we will need to use masks. We'll see what the CDC guidelines are in a couple of weeks when everything gets underway. Any questions about that? And then we will have the iPad set up as well. So if you're out of town or you're not vaccinated, you can Zoom in like we've been doing for the past months. Any questions or thoughts? All right. Can someone let us know what verse we're on tonight?
389.
389. Is Ganesh here tonight?
Yeah, I'm here, Jim.
May I ask you to chant for us then?
Sure.
So the subject under discussion has been samadhi, how we are to practice samadhi, tuning up the mind, practicing finding that space between the thoughts, endeavoring to let go of any vritti, any thought that comes about. And we've begun to enter into the subject, what is this phenomenal world? Two operative terms are as and is. The phenomenal world is consciousness appearing as name and form. Right where the person, place, thing, or situation is, positive, negative, or neutral, there God is. No place where consciousness is absent. There is not a second. It's not God plus a phenomenal world. What we see as the phenomenal world is nothing but the play of consciousness. This becomes very easy to understand if we really analyze the dream state. I like to say you are the God of your dream. You are mini Ishvara. So in the dream, you create a dream body. From that dream body, you have a locus of perception. You peep out at the dream world. You have a dream ego identified with that body. And then you see a phenomenal world of name and form that appears to be outside, and an interior world of thoughts and feelings inside. But if you analyze it from the viewpoint of the waker, you are not in the dream is in you, and every element of the dream is nothing but your mind appearing as those elements. And the scriptures thunder, this world is no different. So the invitation is take it easy. It's nothing but vibration held together by thought. No big deal. Pretty to look at. Seen, but not real. And we have instances of that in our empirical world all the time. You go to the BART station and you look down the tracks and, oh, the tracks are meeting in the distance. I better not get on the train, it's going to crash. No, they just appear to meet in the distance. Seen, but not real. I go out to Ocean Beach and I see the big container ships coming out of the Golden Gate, and they're heading off into the west, and all of a sudden I see them fall off the edge of the world. Oh my God, where are they going? No. What's happening is because of the curvature of the earth, they go out of sight. Falling off the edge of the world, seen, but not real. We can go through so many examples of that. So there's two ways we approach the phenomenal world in Scripture. From one side, we say it's illusion, it's false. pratibimba, like a reflection, meaning it is not substantive and separate and solid. And then from the other viewpoint, we say, well, it's all Brahman, sarvam kalvidam Brahma, as it says in Chandogya. It's all God. If this is difficult to swallow and not your direct experience, all that we ask you to do at this point is be open to the idea that all the stuff I get upset about in the world is like a dream. Just the play of mind. All right, let's do the next verse. Can you help us out, please, Ganesh?
Swayam Brahma, Swayam Vishnu, Swayam Indra, Swayam Shiva, Swayam Vishwamidam Sarvam, Swasmad Anyana Kinchana. The self is Brahma, the self is Vishnu, the self is Indra, the self is Shiva. The self is this entire universe. Indeed, nothing exists except the self.
Yes, yes. So what he's saying here is all the various Hindu deities and the Christian ones and the Sufi ones, all the forms of the divine are nothing but consciousness. And in fact, this entire phenomenal world is nothing but vibration held together by thought. It's all just the play of consciousness. It's all Brahman. It's all the self. It's all the self. Now, we have to understand that Vedanta is not solipsism. Solipsism, philosophically, says when a person says, I am real and I perceive, but I have no idea if anybody else is perceiving anything. I can't verify it. So you think that there's no reality other than your own individual perceptions. And that gets very nihilistic. It can verge on sociopathy as you quit having people in your life. You as an ego are not dreaming the whole world. The Lord is dreaming the whole world. Your little ego is a character in the Lord's dream. Don't ever forget that. So in the end, yourself, in fact, is that out of which this dream world appears. But we don't mean your ego. Any questions about this?
I found that it seems like not complete solipsism, but I see the solipsistic characteristics of it. So I don't know. Is it wrong to see the similarities in any way?
Well,
Or,
I understand what you're saying, and it's nuanced. Because actually what Vedanta talks about is that the phenomenal world is actually a big, enormous group effort. There's not a God Ishwara in the sky who's
well, the
creating.
Hiranya Garba, or how you, isn't that what you
The total
said
mind, yes, that's
Yeah,
the
okay.
correct word.
Okay.
So it's like everybody is projecting through their vasanas, through their belief system, a little corner of the universe. So if you get hit by a bus tonight, Justin, the universe does not wink out of existence, but a little bit of it actually does. And when a baby is born, a little bit more of the universe comes into being. And we've all had the experience that certainly your view of a situation can be radically different than someone else's view of the same situation. So certainly our individual experience of the world
Mhm.
can be quite unique and is definitely a projection of our own minds.
Hmm.
Does that make it a little clearer?
Yeah. It really goes well with this line from Nisargadatta, which I didn't like so much. So it's interesting. He says to take appearance as reality is a grievous sin and the cause of all calamities. And then, you are the all-pervading, eternal, infinitely creative awareness, consciousness. Everything else is local and temporary.
Yes. Not only
Yeah.
local and temporary, but mind.
Yeah, and he says, don't forget what you are. In the meantime, work your heart's content. Work and knowledge
Okay.
should go hand in
Let's
hand.
set him aside and stay with Shankara tonight. All right. So anybody else have any other questions about this point? Again, in the beginning, if it's difficult to believe, and if it's not your experience, just be open to the possibility that what you're seeing as a solid reality is not. And that what you're seeing is essentially the projection of your own opinions and beliefs and triggers. All right, next verse.
Antasvayam chapi vahihi swayam cha swayam purastat swayameva paschat swayam hyavachyam swayamapyudichyam tatho parishtat swayamapyadhastat. The self is within, the self is without. The self is in front, the self is behind. The self is to the south, the self is to the north. So too it is above and below.
So in the language of poetry, what Shankara is inviting us to meditate on is this idea of spatial location of the self. So frequently in the beginning, you'll get the sense like the self is a point from which you look out. Or sometimes when you get really quiet and look within, it's like, oh, it's just vast and empty in space. Or you may get the sense of, okay, when I look out, I see the phenomenal world and the self is kind of behind, like behind my eyes. Well, if that's true, if I turn my head to the side, do I whack the television with the self? Or if people are sitting here in class, God forbid Ganesh would turn his head, will that make Deepa dissolve? Of course not, because the self is not spatially located. And in fact, space is in consciousness. We have the feeling like I am somehow inside my body. But that's an illusion. The question I ask people is, do you incarnate into a dream? Do you leave your bed and somehow enter into the dream body? No. While it seems like I'm inside the body, in the dream, actually, the body is in me. So here's Shankara in the language of poetry. It's above, below, in front, and back, the north, the south. The entire phenomenal world is pervaded by consciousness. Vijnana Ghanam. one homogeneous mass of consciousness, pure awareness. Just like when you dream, you create time and space, so also in consciousness, the entire phenomenal world and time from the Big Bang onward exists in consciousness. I love the way Krishna does this in Gita. In earlier chapters, he says all this is strung on me like money sutra, like gems on a thread, like a necklace. So the self is in you, the self is in me, the self is in everything. Oh, that's really groovy. And then much, much later, he says, well, actually, that's not true. I am not in them. They are in me. Just like the characters in your dream are in you. All this is in infinite consciousness. Now, if you dream about a diamond ring, can you take it off your finger in the dream and bring it back to the waking state? Put it on your dresser? No. Why? Because the diamond ring isn't really in you. It may be a very vivid experience, but what it is imagination. It is sankalpa. So then Krishna says, well, actually, they are not really in me. Behold my divine Maya, the support of it all. Now, as you meditate, with your eyes wide open and your mind gets quieter and quieter, you thin the mind. I tell you, the phenomenal world will thin out as well. Why? The world is the mind and the mind is the world.
We meditate with our eyes open at times. I have no ability to.
What I have asked you to do, as we've covered the section on samadhi, is practice tuning up the mind and being in meditation as you function in the world.
Okay, sorry.
Meditation in action. We're doing Tripura Rahasya on Thursday nights, and we're going to start the section on what they call Sahaja Samadhi, chapter 10, this week. And so Hemachuda is lost in Samadhi. He's deep within and blissing out. His wife comes and says, honey, honey. And he comes out of him and says, oh, how is it that you know of this exalted state, that you're not lost in it, in Samadhi all the time? Don't bother me, I'm going back into Samadhi. She says, honey, honey. How can it be a perfect state if its gain or loss is achieved by the opening or the closing of the eyes, the length of a grain of barley? there's more. Sahaja samadhi, natural or continuous samadhi, is achieved when you see the phenomenal world for what it is. Classic example in scripture is like mirage waters on the desert. When you first see the mirage, your experience, your perception is water, and your knowledge is water. You keep walking toward the mirage and you see it recede and you realize what it is. Then even though your perception is still water, your knowledge is sand. So the fool looks at a phenomenal world and he thinks it's separate from him, joy producing, misery producing. But with the dawn of knowledge, sees the same world. But it's just the play of consciousness. It's trinkets and baubles. It's a big hologram. Then his mind is not moved. It's not triggered anymore. All right, next verse.
Tarangapena Brahma Budbudadi Sarvam Swarupena Jalam Yatha Tatha Chideva Dehadyaham Antametat Sarvam Chide Vaikarasam Vishuddham. Just as the wave, the surf, the whirlpool, the bubbles, etc., are all in essence nothing but water, so too the chit is everything from the body, etc., to the ego. Truly, everything is the homogeneous, pure chit only.
So chit means consciousness, awareness. So if you go to the ocean, you're body surfing, shall we say, and you see out of the ocean these enormous waves. And at the top of the wave, it's all frothy, and there's spray coming out. The waves, the bubbles, the froth, all of it is nothing but the ocean. So also all this is nothing but Brahman. Now, our metaphor falls apart because of this. In the ocean, the surface actually undergoes a change. The waves rise and fall. Something happens to the ocean. We have to take this image and merge it with, like the city in the mirror. So the material cause of the phenomenal world, the stuff out of which it's made, is nothing but consciousness. But when we look to the city in the mirror, it is the mirror itself appearing as the city in the mirror. If the city catches on fire, nothing happens to the mirror. If we see people walking up and down the streets in the city in the mirror undergoes no change. This image falls down because you need an external object to reflect into the mirror. So we have to combine the two. So the phenomenal world is nothing but, as I said earlier, as and is. It's nothing but chit, consciousness appearing as name and form. Right where the people, places, things, and conditions are, consciousness is. But consciousness does not undergo change. And Another classic image, I'm not going to get it now because it would probably be difficult to see with the iPad, is I have a crystal ball. Many of you who've been here have seen my crystal ball. It's quartz crystal. Could you see it if I were to go get it? Yes, no?
Yes, we could, but I think you're fine. You know, I don't know. I can
It'll only
imagine
take
what
me
it
a
is.
second, just a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is quartz crystal. Can you all see it? Yes?
I can. Yes.
Yeah,
Can you see the images in it? Can you see the reflected images in it when I move the crystal ball?
Some of them. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is also stone. It does not have the same properties. Can't see anything in this stone. This is not glass. This is stone. It's quartz. And if you look into the quartz, you can see images. Now, can I take a saw, cut through the quartz, and pull out the various images in it? No. You can see images in the quartz. By the way, this is called spatika in Sanskrit. Crystal. So the images are in the spatika, in the crystal. What are they really? It is the nature of the quartz crystal to have images appear in it. Like it is the nature of consciousness to have the world appear in it. And though the various images appear in the crystal ball, the crystal ball does not undergo any change. So also, consciousness is kutusta, immovable and established like a mountain. Achalam, it never moves. Yet the whole universe moves seemingly in it. Again, one of the very cool images from scripture, and I just happen to have a crystal ball. All right, next verse.
Sadevedam sarvam jagat bhagatam vang manasayoho satonyanyan satyeva prakriti parasimni sthitavatah prithak kim मृत्स्नानायाः कलश घटकुम्भाध्यवगतम् वदत्येष भ्रान्तस्त्वम् अहमिति माया adhiriya. The entire universe, known through speech and mind, is nothing but Brahman. There is nothing but Brahman, which exists even beyond the pale of Prakriti. Can the pitcher, jug, pot, etc., ever be anything other than the mud of which they are made? As an effect of the wine of Maya, the deluded man talks of you and me.
Yes. So it appears as if there's you and me and otherness. But in fact, all of it is nothing but consciousness. as is. Everything, Brahman appearing as name and form. Right where the trouble seems to be in your life, there Brahman is. Now, Brahman's nature is Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, and the fountainhead of bliss. So if I drop all my stupid superimpositions, all is Maya, all is bliss. All's okay. It's all safe. And the body, the pranas, the mind, the intellect, even the ego, all of it is nothing but Brahman. I want to talk a little bit about humility. One of the slogans I like, humility is not thinking less of yourself. Oh, I'm just a humble worm. It's thinking of yourself less. But there's a deep spiritual humility that I invite us all to look at. If it's all Brahman, and all the names and forms are Brahman, that means at the level of your equipment, your body, mind, intellect, and ego sense, you are part of the cosmic dance. Swamiji always used to say it's a cosmos, it's not a chaos. The forms in the creation are all connected. It's a synchronous universe. So even at the level of your equipment, you are perfect just as you are right now. You are exactly as you are supposed to be right now. Does that mean we don't strive hard for liberation? Of course you could do that. And that's perfect too. But this idea of connectedness with the whole dance of life. When we talk about a cosmic dance, or maybe a choir, everybody singing their little part of the great cosmic chorus. Perfect, perfect. So, you don't have to be somebody else. You don't have to be important. You don't have to be special. You may be important. God may have created you to be a superstar. I don't know. God may have created you to be an accountant. I don't know. But you are a necessary part of it all. And when God doesn't need that particular manifestation anymore, guess what happens? You drop dead. Not needed anymore. So the reason I'm sharing this idea is honor honor your own place in creation, as well as everyone else's. Any thoughts on this?
Something I've said is this is the way it goes very well with what you're saying. This is the way God made me. I am perfect the way I am, and there's always room for improvement. That's why I'm on this planet. Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, let's go on. Next verse.
Kriya samabiharena yatra nanyaditi shrutihi braviti dvaitarahityam mityadhya sanivrittaye. With many predicates, Shruti declares the absence of duality in the phrase where there is nothing else, etc., in order to remove all false superimpositions.
So here Shankara footnotes it again by quoting scripture to bring home this idea of not two, Advaita. It looks like subject-object, but it's not two. It just appears as two. The appearance of subject-object is caused by this weird stuff that happens in the intellect, where it refracts into a subject-object relationship. Though it looks like two, it's not two. Sarvam kalvidam brahma. All this, sarvamidam, the phenomenal world, kalu, verily, truthfully, true that is Brahma. Is that a good translation of kalu? I think so. True that. Next verse.
Akashavan Akashava Nirmala Nirvikalpam Nissaman Nissama Nispanda Nissima Nispanda Nirvikaram Antarbahi Shunyam Anyamadvayam Swayam Param Brahma Kimasti Bodhyam. Like the sky, the Supreme Brahman is untainted, untainted absolute, limitless, motionless, and without modifications. It has neither an inside nor an outside. It is one existence and non-dual, and is one's own self. Is there any other thing to be known?
So, in Yoga Vasishta, we have 3 questions. We had 7 questions in this text. The 3 questions we have in Yoga Vasishta are, who am I? What is this world and how has it come about? So now at this very end of the text, Shankara is giving us the answer to those. Who am I? Pure consciousness. What is this world? Pure consciousness. How has it come about? By the strange play of Maya Shakti, the inherent power of the infinite. Seen, but not real. Brahma Satyam Jagam Mithya. Brahman alone is real. Phenomenal world as a phenomenal world is illusory. It's not substantial. Next one.
वक्तव्यं किमु विद्यतेऽत्र बहुधा ब्रह्मैव जीवस्वयं ब्रह्मैतज्जगत्ताततं नु सकलं ब्रह्माद्वितीयं श्रुतिः ब्रह्मैवाहम् इति प्रबुद्धम् अतयः सन्त्यक्तबाह्याः स्फुटं ब्रह्मीभूय वसन्ति सन्तत चिदानन्दात्मनैतद्ध्रुवम्. What is the use of enlarging upon this subject? The Jiva is nothing but Brahman. The whole expanse of this universe is nothing but Brahman. Shruti points out Brahman as being non-dual, and it is an undeniable fact that those who are enlightened, who have established their identity with Brahman, and who have given up their associations with the outside world, live ever in union with Brahman, eternal knowledge and bliss.
So, what does self-realization give us? First and foremost, it gives us what I call existential freedom. When I am rooted in the knowledge that the self in me is Brahman, it isn't born, it can't change, it doesn't have any dirt, it can't get any better, it can't be diminished, and it can't die. It is eternally the same. It is nitya, eternal. Nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to fear. And it reveals to us what is happiness. Happiness is the mind abiding in the self. How do I get the mind to abide in the self? Give up my belief in the substantive reality of the phenomenal world. Let go of all attachments, all control, all expectations, and all identification. It gives us great peace. Great peace. Next one.
Jahimalam ayokashe aham diyothapitasham prasabhama nilakalpe lingavehepi paschat nigamaga nigamagaditakirtim nityam anandamurtim swayamiti parichiya brahmarupena tishtha. Annihilate the hopes raised by the ego in the gross body, a bundle of filth. Then with force, do the same with the air-like subtle body, realizing Brahman, the personification of eternal bliss, which the scriptures eulogize as your own self. Live as Brahman.
So how do I annihilate it? It's a decision. It's a decision to say, I don't give an F about the world anymore. I give it up. I will not get upset or involved about what happens in the exterior. I give up what other people may think of me. I give up what I may think of other people. I give up all the stories of my family of origin, all these things by which I identify myself. All my traumas, all my triggers. Get over it. Just give it up. Give up the world and gain heaven. You can't have both. People misunderstand this notion when the scriptures say you don't have to leave the world and go be a monk on top of a mountain. And they think that what it's saying is, oh, I can have my enjoyments, my attachments, my identifications, and have self-realization. Sorry. No. You either think there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or you know that it's a falsehood. If you still
What do you mean
think,
by that?
if you still think the world can deliver something real to you, it's like believing in the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You're
Oh yeah, I'm
deluded.
sorry. I thought you were saying it different the other way around. My apologies. Yeah, sorry.
If you believe in the flat earth, knock yourself out. It isn't flat. It doesn't make it true. The names and forms are pretty to look at. That's it. So here Shankara says, finish this business. Give up the world. Come home. Hurry home. Hari Om, Swamiji used to say. And if there's still ignorance, the mind will go, yeah, but what about? Blah, 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 blah. Doesn't mean at the level of the equipment we don't do our duty in the world. Next verse.
शवाकारं यावद् भजति मनुजस्तावत् शुचिः परेभ्य स्यात् क्लेशो जननमरणव्याधिनिलयः यदात्मानं शुद्धं कलयति शिवाकारम् अचलं तदा तेभ्यो मुक्तो भवति हि तदाह श्रुतिरपि. As long as man worships his corpse-like body, he is impure and suffers from others and from birth, death, and disease. But when he thinks of himself as the pure, the auspicious, the immovable, certainly he becomes free from them. The Shrutis also testify to this.
So again, the way I like to frame it is to borrow the paradigm from Yoga Vasishta, which says both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. What is bondage? There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted conviction. It's almost like a hypnotic trance that I'm bound, meaning I'm convinced I'm my body, or I'm my body plus my personality. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction in the mind. Technically speaking, it happens in the Vijnana Maya Kosha, the subtle intellect, that I'm free. Listen carefully. It doesn't mean you have the deeply rooted conviction that you're an enlightened person, that you're a Mahatma. People should start reading your books and touching your feet, that you're important. That's still an idea that you're a person. Freedom is when you know you're not a person, when you know you're Brahman. There's no person there. Now that doesn't create Brahman, achieve Brahman. You don't merge into Brahman. You don't become Brahman. You realize in the subtle intellect, oh, I'm not a person. By direct experience, I am that Chidakash, that space of consciousness. Neither state affects the self. But the self doesn't have any problems. It's only my stupid mind that has the problems. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
स्वात्मन्यारोपित शेषाभासवस्तु निरासतः स्वयमेव परं ब्रह्म पूर्णम् अद्वयमक्रियम्. The apparent existences superimposed on the self are removed. Then what remains is the Supreme Brahman, the infinite, non-dual, that which is beyond all activities, alone, all by itself.
So my problem is anyonya adhyas, mutual superimposition. I superimpose upon the self qualities of the not self, and I superimpose upon the not self qualities of the self. So the first one, when I remove my belief that I am the body, that I am my feelings, that I am any thought of self, when I withdraw from even any idea of ego, what remains is witnessing consciousness. Now, what about this world? I think the names and forms are separate from me. They have sat existence out there, separate from me. I see people and they have chit consciousness, separate from mine. And I don't like their consciousness. And the ananda is out there. That person, place, thing, or situation, that's where the bliss is. So I need to remove both superimpositions. What remains is non-dual. it looks like two. Subject object. But it's Advaita. It's not two. One more verse.
Samahitayam satichittavrittau paratmani brahmani nirvikalpe nadrishyate kaschidayam vikalpaha prajalpamatra parishishyate yataha. When the functions of the mind, the thoughts, have merged in the Paramatman, the Brahman, the Absolute, when this phenomenal world is not perceived, then all becomes mere talk.
Yes. So we stop the mind, as Swamiji used to say. Stop the mind and you stop the world. And you're able to bring the thoughts into a state of complete quiescence. And then if you're thoughting out there in the world, you know that none of your thoughting is real. Right? There's anybody else's. And again, the classic example that Ramana Maharshi would use of the old-timey movie projector. This self is like the lamp in the movie projector. The film in the movie projector is like the mind. The images on the film are my particular opinions, beliefs, my vasanas. And peeping out on the screen, the image on the screen is my view of the phenomenal world. Deep sleep is when I forget to take the lens cap off. Now, what happens when you remove all the images from the film? What shows up on the screen? Just white light. But if you know that the images on the screen are not real, there aren't really cars crashing into each other. There aren't really people falling off buildings. It's just a movie. So the woman or the man of knowledge looks at the world like a movie. Entertaining, mostly very funny, but not substantial. All right. How close are we to the end of a chapter, Ganesh?
Can you tell me what verse we're on next?
We got quite a few to go, Jim.
All right, then we'll stop here and take up the rest next week. So what verse will we start tomorrow next week?
400.
400 next week. My gosh, we're jamming through it. Okay, we have time for questions. Did you all fall asleep?
No, we're all here.
No questions? All right, let's have a long meditation then. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Tat Sat. Thank you all.